Wayne wasn't a complicated man. He lived in a small one-bedroom apartment above Mrs. Henderson's bakery. The smell of fresh bread used to be a comfort, a reminder of simpler times. His days were routine. He'd wake up, eat breakfast, and head to his job at the local hardware store, Hammer and Nail. Wayne wasn't the fastest learner, but he was dependable. He stocked shelves, swept floors, and helped customers find the right size screws. It wasn't much, but it was enough. Wayne found solace in routine. His life wasn't filled with excitement, but it had a quiet dignity. He had his job, his small apartment, and his pet gerbil, Garth. Garth was his only family. He'd talk to Garth about his day, about the weather, about anything, really. Garth would just sit there twitching his nose. But for Wayne, it felt like companionship. Life wasn't perfect, but it worked. He had a place in the world, or so he thought. It was a Tuesday just like any other when the world tilted on its axis. A customer, flustered and in a hurry, was backing out of his parking spot. Wayne, distracted by a delivery of paint cans, didn't see the reversing car. The crunch of metal on metal echoed through the parking lot. His heart sank. The customer's car, a shiny new sedan, now had a significant dent in its rear bumper. Wayne's manager wasn't sympathetic. Accidents happen, he'd said, but the look in his eyes told a different story. The cost of the repair, deducted directly from Wayne's paycheck, was more than 2 weeks' salary. Wayne, already living paycheck to paycheck, was devastated. He pleaded with the manager, explained his situation, but it fell on deaf ears. "Business is business," the manager had said, his voice cold and final. Wayne was let go. He walked out of the hardware store that day with a cardboard box of his belongings and a sense of dread that settled deep in his stomach. Unemployment. The word hung over Wayne like a dark cloud. He'd never been without a job, never had to ask for help. He didn't even know where to begin. He knew people talked about welfare and food stamps, but those seemed like things that happened to other people, not to him. Pride, a misplaced sense of shame, kept him from seeking help. He figured he'd find a new job soon enough. He started applying for any job he could find. Janitor, dishwasher, even tried to be a crossing guard. But everywhere he went, the answer was the same: "We'll call you." Days turned into weeks and the rejections piled up. Despair began to set in. He started skipping meals, stretching his dwindling savings. He pawned a few valuables, an old watch from his grandfather, a chipped baseball signed by a local team he barely followed. Each lost possession chipped away at his spirit. The walls of his small world were closing in. He was trapped with nowhere to turn. Eventually, the gnawing emptiness in his stomach was a constant companion. He'd lie awake at night, listening to his own stomach growl. The sweet aroma of baking bread from Mrs. Henderson's apartment below only intensified his hunger. He tried to ignore it, told himself it wasn't that bad, but the pangs were relentless. He started scavenging for scraps in dumpsters behind restaurants, shame burning in his throat. One evening, the hunger became unbearable. He looked at Garth, his little gerbil, scurrying in his cage. The thought, when it first entered his mind, was horrifying. But as the days wore on, the line between right and wrong blurred. He told himself it was a kindness, that Garth wouldn't suffer. He still remembers the guilt, the shame, the metallic taste that lingered long after. Section 5, From Alley Rat to Hunter. The streets became his new hunting grounds. He started with rats. They were plentiful, especially in the alleyways behind restaurants. He'd catch them, his heart pounding, and take them back to his apartment. He ate them microwaved at first, driven by desperation. Later he learned to build a small fire in a makeshift grill outside his apartment building, the flames casting flickering shadows on the brick walls. He expanded his hunting grounds. Parks, backyards, anywhere he thought he could find food. Squirrels, pigeons, stray cats. Anything he could catch became a potential meal. He knew it was wrong, knew he'd crossed some invisible line, but the need to survive, to silence the gnawing hunger, overruled everything else. He was no longer the Wayne he knew, the one who took pride in his simple life. He was a survivor, driven by primal instinct. Section 6. The line blurred. The neighborhood was abuzz with rumors of missing pets. Flyers with pictures of beloved cats and dogs, their eyes wide with innocence, were plastered on telephone poles and shop windows. Wayne saw them, felt a pang of guilt, but quickly pushed it aside. He told himself those pets had loving homes, that their owners would take care of them. His own hunger, he reasoned, was more important. The line between hunting vermin and taking a pet once so clear had become terrifyingly blurred. He justified it by telling himself he'd never take a pet that looked loved, that he was doing the owners a favor by taking in strays. But deep down he knew it was a lie. He was eventually caught, jailed and sent to prison. The saddest part is he doesn't think he did anything wrong.